Right, if you could take your seats, please. Take your seats, please. Right, welcome back. Now we move into our next session, which is about how can DPULOs demonstrate we are better to secure contracts and funding. And this will be led by Lynne Turnbull and Tina Jones, who will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I'm Lynne Turnbull. I'm one of the ambassadors for the Strengthening Disabled People's User-Led Organisations programme, and this is my colleague.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tina Jones, and I too am an ambassador.
Hi, I've just introduced myself, so I won't do it again, but I agreed to give a little bit of background on why this session is happening, and really what the point of it is. Through the Strengthening DPULOs programme, we started off primarily by providing grant funding to enable DPULOs to deliver projects that would make them more sustainable. And we also had a team of 17 ambassadors, both young people and also older people, not young people, who have typically worked in the DPULO world, so they might be chief executives of DPULOs, or in those sorts of roles. And they went out and are going out to provide individual advice and kind of free consultancy to DPULOs to help them become stronger. So the sorts of things that ambassadors have been asked to provide advice on are things like developing a new business plan or trying to find an alternative income stream. But increasingly, we're finding that more and more DPULOs were struggling to make contact with their local commissioners, or they were struggling to develop relationships with new commissioners. And that's likely to become even more relevant over the next 12 months as clinical commissioning groups start to develop and embed themselves. They will have the potential to commission services directly from organisations like DPULOs. And it's a whole new set of people, so potentially developing a whole new set of relationships. And I think we all know these are tough times, and with the potential reduction in funding for local authorities, that might have impacts on voluntary sector. And in the context of that, what we wanted to do is we wanted to find a way that the programme could support individual DPULOs to develop new relationships with commissioners, or to strengthen existing relationships with commissioners in what was quite a positive and quite a productive way. In my experience, both in my previous job as a commissioner and also in my current job as national lead, one of the things that struck me is that often service users and also organisations representing their voice can be terribly frustrated by the context in which they're operating, and the reality out there. And so sometimes dialogue with commissioners can be quite negative. So when I was commissioning, people would come to me and they tell me a list of all the things that were wrong about what we were doing, and also sort of in the world more generally. And that's helpful, obviously. But what's more helpful is when you move to a situation where people aren't just talking about the problems, but they're collaborating and helping to come up with the solutions. And so the point of these workshops really is a kind of structured or facilitated way. So we, through the ODI, through ambassadors, can support you and can open doors to your local commissioners. And the structure and the format is really to ensure that it's about joint problem solving and developing relationships that are about collaboration or co-production. So that's really the intro, and I really just wanted to explain kind of the background to why we approach this strand of work. I'm going to hand over to Tina and to Lynne, because they're the real people who have done this work. They've been developing it and piloting it, and it's really over to them.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, I'm going to start off with a case study, really, where this is still sort of following on from the background that Rachel's given to you. In Cheshire West, we started to look at a key challenge affecting disabled people, and equally commissioners were also telling us what some of the barriers were for them. And it was about how we could bring that together, because ultimately everybody in the room is still trying to support disabled people within their local community, and it was around how we could get over perhaps some politics. There are differences in opinions between DPULOs as the voice of disabled people and obviously commissioners who are very much trying to fight with their reducing budgets. The key challenge was lack of consistency in physically accessing the community, and the key difficulty facing commissioners was trying to improve access to the community for local disabled people despite reducing budgets. And what that told us was actually they were actually fighting for the same thing, but they were just coming at it from very different angles. So that was the seed really on how we could develop this. So as a result of trialling this workshop, local DPULOs and commissioners worked collaboratively to design the following solution. So they rolled numerous contracts with DPULOs who provided shop mobility in different locations into a single contract. They then provided seed funding to establish a consortium of existing DPULOs capable of delivering a single shop mobility contract, and then they applied Article 19 from the procurement legislation to the shop mobility tender to ensure that the contract was delivered by a DPULO, and local commissioners and DPULOs co-produced a joint action plan to deliver the solution. The action plan is being delivered, the seed funding has been spent as an outcome, and the consortium of DPULO providers has been established. A specification for a single shop mobility contract has been developed and co-produced, and the local authority have authorised the use of Article 19 legislation, and the contract is due to be awarded in June 2014.
Case study 2, can everybody hear me okay? Case study 2 was working in Camden, looking at commissioning support as they wanted to set up a centre of independent living. So the work around that was about trying to look at their priorities, look at how they could work in co-production and co-design with local DPULOs, and a series of work took place thinking about market analysis, what's already there, what needs to be developed, what can be developed further, and the outcome from that piece of work was that DPULOs really influenced the commissioning approach, and the outcome was that DPULOs had some seed funding to work together to develop a consortium to think about becoming tender ready. So how are DPULOs in that area going to work together, how they're going to work with Camden, and how they're going to influence some of those decisions around that huge investment of a centre of independent living. So I know we haven't got a lot of time. We're going to have lunch at past, but what we really wanted to do now was to try and talk you through very quickly, as a whistle-stop tour really, that when we do these workshops we will have half a day, not 3/4 of an hour, but we really wanted to do some work with you in the next 3/4 of an hour to be thinking about the workshops that we're doing and the process that we'll be going through. So some of the key messages, some of the background for that is around, I think Rachel's covered most of this really. It's about wanting disabled people to have a stronger voice, and about looking at wider agendas in the times of austerity that we have at the moment. And I think, as I say, some of those things have already been covered, but some of the whys behind it, some of the key messages that go out as part of these workshops is about some of that promotional material. So, pre-workshop, some of the process is that the need for this to happen in the first place is highlighted via some of the regional work, some of the regional networks, and then some promotional correspondence is sent out to local commissioners and local DPULOs. And what I have done is I have put, for discussion in a minute, I have put a pack on every single table, so you can actually see what actually goes out. Some background information goes out, some questionnaires to be filled in, so we can really get down to what the local issues are. So a questionnaire would go out to the local DPULO or DPULOs, and local questionnaires would go out to the commissioners. So we could really start to think about some key challenges that you have in your local areas. Once the questionnaires come back, then there is some work that's done between Lynne and myself to think about making a real bespoke questionnaire, sorry, real bespoke workshop to meeting your own needs locally.
Okay, so once we're delivering the workshop, we would have an agreement for working together, which I've just skimmed through because I'm conscious of time, but that's just to make sure that what's discussed in the room stays in the room. The intention obviously is that we've got a group of DPULOs and commissioners in the room together for the workshop, and as Tina said, we've already analysed the questionnaire, so we know what the key issues are affecting local disabled people within that area. In terms of the agenda, if we were doing this for real, I mean, this is a sort of walkthrough today, but it would be half a day, and we would be going through a number of workshops with the purpose of developing an action plan at the end of that, with very tangible actions as a result for the DPULO and commissioners to work on together. So what we're going to do is, because we don't want to sit here talking at you for the next 40 minutes, we're actually going to go through the aims with you, and then we're going to hand over to you and ask you to do a workshop. So the overall aims of the workshop are to co-produce solutions to local issues for disabled people, and facilitating collaborations between DPULOs and commissioners to improve those outcomes for disabled people. In terms of specific aims, if we were delivering the workshop, we would select a key challenge affecting local disabled people or a difficulty facing commissioners and DPULOs in trying to overcome these challenges, design a joint solution, and then plan a joint action plan between commissioners and DPULOs to deliver this solution. And the output of the workshop will be a joint action plan.
So on your tables with your pack, I've actually put some challenges because, of course, we would have already had those challenges back. So I've put a challenge that is, for example, lack of information and advice, put a challenge that is about lack of community access. So what I really wanted you to do now in 10 minutes, so it's quite short of time, is to split yourself into half of you in the group being a commissioner, and half of you in the group being a disabled person or a DPULO. And as part of that 10 minutes, I really want you to think about what would it feel like for you. So if you were the commissioner, what would it feel like to be presented with that challenge, and what does it feel like as a DPULO or a disabled person to have that challenge? And after 10 minutes, I'd really like then, we possibly won't be able to have every group to feedback, but really wanted to have the opportunity to feedback some key points around that. So everybody happy, everybody clear? For people that are non-DPULO teams, could they be a DPULO, please? So if you're here from the ODI, could you be acting in the 10 minutes as a DPULO, please? Thank you. Say a couple of things first. Did you want to say anything?
Right, folks, can we get back together? Just before we take some feedback, I would just like to read out a contribution that we've had from someone who's dialed in.
I'm sorry, guys, we need silence, I'm afraid. Otherwise, the people who are participating by video link can't hear anything.
Just want to share with you some feedback that we've had from someone who's dialing in, they've stated that an agreement on what is co-production would be useful, as this is often not understood by local authorities or commissioners. So I think that's a very valid point, and something that we need to take away as part of this, to perhaps develop as part of the background. There's a couple of things that I wanted to reiterate that I'm conscious from the slides that we probably didn't make completely clear when we were speaking. But if we were actually delivering this workshop for real, the questionnaire pack that you've got on your table, there's a separate one for DPULOs and there's a separate one for commissioners, and each delegate would be expected to fill that in. So it wouldn't just be one coming back from the DPULO representative and one from the commissioners, it would be each delegate. And then our job would be to analyse those results and come up with the main challenge facing the local area for local disabled people. So I hope that offers some clarity. And I think I'm going to hand over to Tina in terms of some feedback.
Does any table want to particularly feedback how it felt? Before we move on to think about solutions into workshop 2, I just wondered if there's a couple of people from the room that were just brave enough to say, how did it feel to be a commissioner, or how did it feel to be as a DPULO?
Thanks, Rachel. We were the DPULO, and it was about how we felt, and we had our frustrations. We felt really frustrated that the commissioners were not listening to our voice, that they had already made their minds up. They wanted a one-size-fits-all type of scenario, that they continually ask us to provide evidence of what we can actually do, and we spend so much time putting that evidence together, but then pages and pages of it, but doesn't seem to get anywhere. Is it the right evidence? Can they help and support us and say, well, this is the sort of evidence that we actually want that would make things really, really useful? We felt that we weren't always valued, and that we would welcome their feedback to help build our capacity to be able to ensure that they gave us that first opportunity to get a small amount of funding to actually provide them with that evidence, to show them that we can actually do it, so that they give that leap of faith and give us the trust to go forward and actually deliver something, and that we looked forward in working with our commissioners in the future now that they've granted us this opportunity.
Wow. Is anybody willing to follow that?
We all discussed it as commissioners because we're all from DPULOs, and we feel as commissioners we'd like to see some evidence of the DPO to prove that they can do what they say they do. So we'd like to see their strategic plans, and we'd like to see their policies, etc., and some evidence of what they've done in the past that shows that they can provide us with good value for money. We're a bit concerned about the cost implication of being inclusive, because we've been told we've got to make sure that we get it out to information that's accessible, etc., and involve everybody from across the diverse population. So there's a big cost implication there that we're a bit concerned about. And we also are being expected to feedback outcomes, which is really after the event, which again is an additional cost of the budget, but we're being told that that's really important, and we're a bit concerned about the cost implication there again. One of the things that was that actually I've written down that was said here was the evidence of the ability to fulfil your promises as a DPULO.
Thank you. Just one more, so we can move on, please. Thank you.
From the Commissioner's angle, I don't know what this evidence is that you've put in front of me, because I don't understand it. What I'm hearing is it's all terrible, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and you're telling me my career has been completely ineffectual, and you're all really upset, so I'm going to go home and have a drink. Sorry, I was in a meeting yesterday where basically we covered this. What I've got in front of me is a whole load of memorandums of understanding of what I want delivered. And what I want to see is piece of paper after piece of paper after piece of paper about how you're going to deliver it. So I really don't grasp what you're talking about. It's a totally different culture.
Thank you for that. Before we move on to thinking about what a solution may look like, I just wanted to highlight a couple of examples of how solutions have been made in other areas by DPULOs to some of the challenges that I put on the table. So one around choice and control. One of the solutions was around Chester CIL coming up with a PA register. One about lack of access was arts activities from Disability Direct. So as part of the workshop, once we've talked about how it would feel, and before we moved on to be thinking about local solutions, we would, as part of the workshop, go through a series of slides that we would have prepared earlier, knowing what the challenges were, so we could start moving along as part of the workshop to be looking at solutions and to be looking at how we move this particular challenge forward. So I shall hand over to Lynne to work through with you workshop 2. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, as Tina says, we're aiming for a slide pack of around 100 different examples. We're not quite there yet, but we're hopeful by the end of the day we'll perhaps have a few more, and we'll come to that a bit later. But we would be targeting the solutions based on the feedback that we have to the challenges. So they're the ones that we would home in on. So there was never an intention to run through every single slide in our slide pack, but it is there as a resource tool to be able to show some of the solutions. So some examples we've got from speaking to DPULOs and disabled people. Some of the key challenges were voice, choice and control, access to information and advice, the welfare reform, timescales for community care, assessments, adaptable housing, access to housing, advocacy, access to local community, abuse and service provision. And we've got a couple of examples to some of those. So potentially things like a DPULO being a partner to non-DPULOs to encourage more services being available, looking at using DPULOs for local market stimulation, DPULO consortiums, so covering a larger area, and looking more at early intervention and prevention as a DPULO. So in workshop 2, what we would be doing is everyone attending would be given a number, and that number would correspond to 1, 2 or 3, which would either make them a commissioner, a disabled person, or a disabled people's user-led organisation. And what we would be asking them is, what are some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats from those viewpoints of the examples they've seen? So they would come up with essentially a SWOT analysis, but based on those different viewpoints. And we would be targeting that very much, so that we'd be trying where possible to make DPULOs commissioners, to seeing it from another side, and making commissioners disabled people or DPULOs, so that we could ask them to see it from a slightly different perspective. And then we'd be starting to ask them, what would a local solution look like? So we'd be allocating time to do that, which would be half an hour. We obviously can't go through that with you today, but as a very quick tour through, that is exactly what we'd be doing. So everyone would be allocated a number, and they would be asked from their particular perspective to look at what they thought of the examples they'd seen out of the slide pack, and what would a local solution look like for them. In workshop 3, which would be coming to the end of the workshop, is where we start to ask people to populate with tangible evidence of actions that could be taken away from the meeting and actually delivered. So we'd be wanting to look at what action was required, who would be doing it, when would it be done, and then they could indicate whether that was done or not, and that would all be collected, and we'd be asking people to feed back to us on that. And actually what that should do is encourage the DPULOs and the commissioners to carry on working together to be able to deliver that action plan. We've got an example that we can show you going back to the Cheshire West case study where it was piloted. And so of the action plan there, it's very small on the PowerPoint behind me, but one of the actions was arranging a meeting with the legal team regarding Article 19 legislation to see how we could best use that locally. We circulated a list of all the DPULOs in the Cheshire West and Chester area and their contact details to the senior management team so that all of the commissioners knew all of the DPULOs, what they delivered and how to contact them. We made links with commissioner subgroups, the public sector, as well as the DPULO, so we actually widened the net in that regard. They said that they would involve DPULOs sooner in commissioning decisions to ensure that potential services meet the needs of disabled people and reflect what's important to individuals and not the council, which was really important. They reviewed something that they've got locally called My Life, My Choice, and looked at the existing mapping that they had and said that they would address that accordingly. We said we'd send examples of commissioners using Article 19, and we arranged a meeting with councillors regarding the importance of DPULOs and the benefits of engagement, and actually held a session with cabinet members around the importance of DPULOs. We said about how we could report as DPULOs on the social value to demonstrate value for money, and they said that they would implement named contacts for contracts in recognition of the fact that it's constantly a changing landscape, and your commissioners are changing sometimes from month to month or year to year. There's constant changes. And we said that they'd share information with the ambassador in the local area as a named contact to potentially facilitate links with the DPULOs and commissioners, to benefit frontline staff and service users, to enable consultation and capturing a voice. So that was the action plan that we came up with from the workshop that we delivered in Cheshire West. They're all obviously going to look very different depending on what the local issues are, particularly to the area. But that is just to give you an indication of how that workshop would run.
So finally, we'd really like to build on the experiences of solutions of local DPULOs to be using those examples within our workshops. The challenges that we went through in the slide earlier were all challenges that had come from DPULOs across the country. But what we're really interested in today is if you've got any good examples from your own DPULO, we'd really love to hear from you. If you've had some really focused and solution work, we're really keen to get those experiences. We have left our contact details, but obviously around lunchtime with people around the room, if you wanted to leave your details with anybody, then Lynne and I will get back to you. So finally, we've got 10 minutes left. Really wanted in your tables to spend a little bit of time thinking about what we've proposed today, especially the agenda that we gave out for our half-day workshop, thinking of the work that goes into the workshop, the questionnaires that go out, the background information, so the pre-work, the work around the workshops, around workshop 1, trying to look at what a local solution would feel like from trying to look at it from different people's perspectives, trying to then work through some of the solutions, thinking about workshop 2, about taking it to the next level and aiming to become co-productive, looking at joint solutions, and then finally the action plan that would then go through after the workshop. So we've got some tangible activities and some working towards some tangible outcomes for working in your local area. So in the last 10 minutes in your tables, if you could please just have some thoughts around what you think about the idea of the workshop in your local areas. Is there anything you'd particularly like to add? Is there anything you'd particularly like to change? And do you know of any DPULOs that may find this useful? So if we could just have 10 minutes for that, thank you.
Right, folks. Really sorry, but I'm going to ask everyone to come back. I'm conscious that we want to keep to time. We've just got a few minutes if anyone would like to feedback in terms of anything that they would change about the workshop or what they think of the idea of delivering the workshop. We've had some really interesting views already from those who've dialed in about the relationship with local authorities being very different to health. Sorry folks, can we have it quiet so that everyone who's dialing in can hear? We've had some really interesting feedback from those that are dialing in around the relationship in this region being much better with health than it is perhaps with the local authority. They don't seem quite as sort of narrow-minded about the work of DPULO, so that's really interesting in how it's affecting this region. I guess I've just been asked to make the point about the Article 19 legislation, because perhaps not everybody has heard of that. We can make sure that a link gets sent out about Article 19, but essentially for contracts that are going out to tender, there is an opportunity for commissioners to reserve those contracts for supported businesses, and a DPULO would be classed as a supported business because it employs more than 50% of its workforce as disabled people. So that's obviously really useful to know, particularly for big contracts over 175,000. Because it means that you can limit some of the competition, which is some of the issues that have been picked up by Video Link as well, about the competition from community interest companies or in-house services from local authorities that are becoming community interest companies. So it would be a way of actually then reserving it specifically for a supported business such as a disabled people's user-led organisation. Could we just get any feedback then? That would be really helpful. And obviously we've got the email address if anyone would like to send us any examples that we could add to our slide pack. Have we got a microphone?
Hi. We just wondered about the potential tensions that might be in the room or beforehand. We don't just mean potential tensions between the commissioners and the DPULOs, but possibly tensions between the DPULOs themselves. And we wondered if you had any plans on how to maybe break those tensions down to make it a positive outcome for the day.
I think that's a really interesting point, thank you. In terms of the tensions perhaps between DPULOs themselves, I think there's a number of ways that can be achieved. I guess that's around very clear conversations with the DPULOs beforehand around the nature of the workshop. Let's just go back to the beginning, that this isn't about focusing on issues for the DPULOs, but actually about what are the issues for disabled people locally. And if I go right back to that case study, the issues were actually the same for the DPULOs as they were for the commissioners. They were just coming at it from different angles. So the issue was still about access to the local community, and the workshop helped to address that, to make them think about coming together and how actually that could be delivered jointly. So for me, it's just about being very clear about what the workshop's about and doing that work to unpick the feedback, because we're hoping we would get some of that from the questionnaires, because there's room to put comments. So we would hopefully perhaps pick up some of those tensions and be able to address those by looking at specifically the challenges that we look at for that local area. Hope that helps.
When we were developing the format and had the idea for workshops, one of the key points of it is that it will be themed around challenges that are identified by all the different participants prior to the workshop. So the first thing that happens is a questionnaire is sent out, and the DPULO attendees, the commissioner attendees, all have the opportunity to say what they feel are the key issues affecting local disabled people, one, and two, what they think are, or what they feel are the key challenges they face in addressing those issues. And that's really important, because what Tina and Lynne then do is to pick out areas where there are synergies between the two. So rather than the workshop being focused on DPULOs or commissioners, so organisations, the workshops are themed on those common challenges, and the purpose of the workshop is to identify a solution for those common challenges. So in answer to your question about tension, we've tried to avoid tensions both around between commissioners and DPULOs and multiple DPULOs by having them themed on common challenges faced by all, and then developing common solutions that will be beneficial to all.
So any more questions? Anything anybody else wants to raise? Any feedback around what do people think about the workshops? Do people think they'd be useful in their local areas?
So we were got in a slight discussion. What kind of numbers, area-wide size, are you looking at? Are you looking at a single local area, or are you looking at a region? Are we looking at half a region? So could we just get this for Gloucestershire, because we've already got 7 local authorities, plus a police commissioner, plus a clinical commissioning group?
I would say we're looking at more localised issues for local disabled people that we can think about some common solutions. So I'd say it was to be localised.
So it could be right down to the Gloucestershire level. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Hello, I'm thinking this might be quite a useful fishing rod to get commissioners engaged. The way in which local authorities are measured in terms of equalities is the Local Government Framework for Equalities. A number of local authorities in the South West are keen at the moment and working together to try to go for excellence. Your workshops might help them get there and might encourage quite time-poor commissioners to want to engage more with DPOs. So I think there's a little bit of a sell there that DPOs can use in their favour.
Excellent, thank you for that. I think a good example of that is that we had a commissioner yesterday that was really looking at their vision around working together and around looking at local challenges, and they mentioned their local accounts, and I think from that, from some of the discussions around the room with local DPULOs, they were already coming up with some really brilliant solutions to some of the challenges that they were facing, and then the outcome of that is that they welcomed us to come and have a workshop to try and take that further, as they're at the moment looking at their strategic vision to move things on. So that's a really good example. Thank you.
It's just a thought about really thinking from the workshops to sound really good, but it's around about timing for me. And often, I think sometimes DPULOs and other organisations go to the commissioner at the wrong time. There are certain times in the year when they're exceptionally busy and have to do X, Y, and Z, and it's either too late or not. So something about understanding when our commissioners actually going to go out to actually tender. But actually, by the time they're issuing the tender, it's far too late. So you need to think about how can we have this workshop now that will inform what's going to happen this year, so that everybody, if you like, all the ducks are in the right order, so that you're able to have the greater impact at the right time.
I think that's a really good point. Thank you. Just one more.
I want to add 2 points. One of them is, if you do the workshop, we really need the information to be sent to people beforehand, so they have time to read it. And the point is very small. Have to make it bigger and accessible for everyone. Absolutely. But on a second talk, I would like to add a question in the workshop. Should we have an organization of DPULO that represent us, that send us information, that so we know in advance of any bid to go? Because if we are based on our local activity, we are very good for our local people, but we can miss a lot of information that happen elsewhere. So maybe we need to elect a group that change, like normal, either organization or commission, whatever we call it, but they will actually represent us in meetings and so on, and will circulate information to us so that we're always up to date. people can affiliate, and I think it will be a good idea, but we need to ask them.
Thank you. Okay, can I draw this to a close now and just say thank you very much for your input. It was a whistle-stop tour. We were trying to get half a morning's activities. A lot of work will take place before the actual workshops with the things in the pack being sent out. But can I thank you for your feedback? Can I thank you for your time? And just finally to say, any really good examples, both of our email addresses are available, and people around the room have got access to sending things to us. So if you've got any really good ideas, your own DPULO has been involved in some really good work, we'd really, really love to hear from you. So thank you very much.
Okay, right, it's now lunchtime. Please get back by 1:30 promptly. We will start at 1:30 promptly. Don't forget, if you've got a travel expenses claim, to go to room 1 at some point during lunchtime to talk to someone in there about that. There will be a brief video being shown behind me about some work that's been done by Living Options Devon. Hopefully you'd like to see that. And there are stores obviously in here and next door in room 2 and 3. Do please visit them. And hopefully have a good lunch. Thank you.